Hey, Bowtie Nation, Joseph Hogue here. Thank you again for being here with me on these Sundays. I love doing these live streams on Sundays. Just a chance to take off the tie, get a little bit informal there, and just have a conversation with you. And, so got my beer money. Hope you got yours wherever you're at in the world. See some longtime members of the Bowtie Nation here in the chat. So I love seeing that. Ambrose, longtime OG of the Bowtie Nation from Albany there. See Somalia, Croatia. Love seeing everybody from wherever you're at there in the Bowtie Nation. So let me know if I'm coming through all right. You can hear me, everything like that. I've been having some troubles with the microphone over the last couple of weeks, so I want to check on that. But I want to get right into the topic of today, right? Because I think this is going to be one of the most important themes over the next couple of years that's not being priced into stocks yet, right? One of the most important things you can do in investing is understand where that next news or headline is coming from, right? You don't necessarily invest in the news that's already out because it's already priced into stocks, folks. You need to understand where the facts are taking us, where the economy is taking us in those earnings, and a lot of things that are going to come through over the next year. And look for the stocks that are going to benefit from that. And one of the most important things I think that is not priced into stocks yet is an endemic coronavirus. Okay, so we're going to talk about what this is, how it's going to affect stocks, and then how to invest over the next couple of years. And I want to clear something up right now because we're going to get a lot of haters. Already got a lot of people disliking the video before it's even started because it's talking about a stock market crash. And understand, folks, there are just haters, investors out there that want to hear that the sun's always going to shine, and they just want YouTubers to tell them everything's going to be all right. They want daddy to tell you, hey, I'm going to make everything rainbows and unicorns for you and make you money no matter what. Well, okay, folks, this channel isn't for the people that just want to cherry coat things and want to tell you that things are always going to be great with the stock market. Okay, I'm optimistic. Optimistic on this year. You're not going to see a stock market crash in a year when economic growth is projected 6.5% or higher. Okay, you're not going to see a crash in a year when we're pushing something like $8 trillion into the economy, okay? And households have excess savings of $2.5 trillion, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when this coronavirus does mutate and become endemic, like the flu, then you're going to see a lot of the effects that we've seen over this last year, over March of last year, and February of last year come back, and that's going to hit stocks. And I want you to be ready for that. That doesn't mean sitting out the markets. It doesn't mean being overly pessimistic and a market bear, but it does mean being ready for that and being ahead of it before it does hit the markets. So you know what? If you want somebody to cherry coat things and not tell you the facts and where things are, then this probably isn't the channel for you. If you want the truth, if you want to be ahead of where the next market trends and headlines are going to be, then I'm glad you're here. And again, thank you for being here for these weekly live chats that we have. So we're going to be covering that today, what an endemic coronavirus means, where it's going to hit hardest, how it's going to affect those stocks, and how to invest and how to have your portfolio ready. And then we'll also do Q&A at the end, as we always do. Love being able to do that back and forth with you out there in the nation. Last week's videos actually started doing some sharing perspectives from other channels. We did Kerry from Best of Us Investors. He had a video on Thursday. Going to do that again, this next week with Thomas Carvo. He's got a great technical analysis 101 video coming for you on Thursday. Something that we don't cover a whole lot on the channel, so I wanted to get his perspective and his insight into that. Also going to be covering some drone stocks here tomorrow, Monday, part of our Big Ideas, ARK Invest Big Ideas series. I love the series, 15 life-changing themes, those long-term life-changing trends that we're seeing in the market. And so we're going to be covering the 5 drone stocks that I'm watching for that theme. Also going to be talking about some penny stocks under $5, so that'll be a fun one, and actually going to do a little bit of a twist on that with stocks, best stocks. I got 10 stocks for you, 2 under $5, 2 under 4, 2 under 3, all the way down to 2 stocks under $1 per share. So that's going to be a real fun video. I got that coming up on Wednesday. But let's get started here, because I do think this is something that the market isn't pricing in yet. It's something that you can get ahead of. There's so much news and so much headlines out there that they're already priced into stocks that by the time most investors, by the time you get to your computer, that it's the opportunity's out. And in fact, a lot of those stocks, a lot of the things that are affected by the headlines are already priced in, overpriced into those, into those stocks. So you're actually, if you're in at that point, then you're going to see losses because that's when stuff starts coming out after the headlines, out of the prices after those headlines. But this is something that I think, you can be watching out for. You can position your investments, or you can set kind of a timeline for your investments, and you can do very well for when this happens. Okay. So I want to start out with, what an endemic coronavirus means. What does endemic mean? And some timelines for that. Okay. So now, what does endemic mean? Endemic is just when a virus mutates every year, or every few years, and making vaccines ineffective. And it's really, so it's really an ongoing kind of virus, for a population, and then it can be concentrated, localized to a region, or worldwide, right? Which is probably how the coronavirus is going to be, just because it spreads so fast, so quickly, and so easily, right? A lot of other viruses don't spread quite as quickly as coronavirus. So while they may come back every few years, or you might have an outbreak every few years, they don't spread globally, right? Because researchers and epidemiologists are able to spot where they're growing and kind of quarantine that area. That's not true with the coronavirus, right? It spreads so quickly, and especially some of these new mutations that we're seeing out of the UK, out of South Africa, out of Brazil, they spread so much more quickly that it can go to, it can go globally very quickly before you even have symptoms on the virus. This kind of thing happens with the flu every year, right? You have to get a shot for the year, a vaccine for the year, each year. Not saying that that's going to happen with coronavirus, but it will be, every few years you'll probably have to get a new shot, right? It happens with others like bird flu, like swine flu, but those just mutate less frequently, okay? All viruses, they mutate, right? It's just the survival mechanism of the virus, right? It knows it needs to mutate and to be able to find those new hosts and beat those immunities that the hosts have built up, right? Things like bird flu, swine flu, other viruses, they mutate less frequently than the regular flu that we get every year, right? But we've already seen it in coronavirus, those mutations that we've seen that have affected its transmissibility, right? How quickly it spreads haven't necessarily changed, the key protein parts of that virus, and we're not going to go into the actual medical stuff in it, but it hasn't made vaccines ineffective, right? It hasn't mutated enough that that it becomes that those vaccines become ineffective. But it's going to happen, right? And we're going to get into why that's going to happen and what that's going to happen later on. But anyway, so endemic just means that, like the flu, like the common flu, it's going to come back not every year, maybe perhaps, but every few years we could get a bad spurt, right? And what happens here is, and how you work this into into your investing theme is, we're not necessarily going to have global pandemic lockdowns like we did last year, okay? But especially that very first time it happens, that first mutation that they find that makes all these vaccines ineffective, that's going to hit the markets, and I want you to be ready for that, okay? So we're going to talk about that as well. So I want to talk about, why COVID will become endemic and kind of the timeline for that. And for that, we can go to some surveys that have been done recently. There was a February survey of 100 immunologists and infectious disease experts. 90% said that the coronavirus will become endemic, okay? Not maybe, not possibly, but will become endemic, 90%, right? And a lot of these were, different factors. They gave immune escape, which is just kind of a technical term for some people just don't build up that immunity to the vaccine, right? After taking the vaccines, some people just don't build up that immunity, right? They say that the J&J vaccine, I think, is something like 85% effective. That's a one dose. The Moderna, the Pfizer vaccines are like 90%, but you still got that 10% of the population that just doesn't build up an immunity, right? So they can still get COVID, they can still get the coronavirus, and they can still pass it on, right? You also have things like waning immunity, right? Natural and vaccinated immunities just wear off. Okay, people that have had the coronavirus, they've been found to be kind of immune to it or not get it for at least another 6 months or so. Right now, with the people that have been vaccinated, they're continuously testing them to see what kind of immunities they have in their bodies against it. But these things do wear off, and that's what they're testing for to see how long these vaccines are working. Okay. But a lot of this, you've got vaccine hesitancy and people that just aren't going to take it, right? At any one time in the population, you've got at least 10 to 20% of the people that don't trust vaccines, don't trust the government, don't trust, the medical community, whatever. For whatever reason, they're just not going to take the vaccine, right? They're not going to get it, okay? So what happens here with all of these factors is they just kind of build up, right? They build up and they give the vax or the virus an opportunity to mutate. Okay, and the problem here is that, like we said, a virus mutates, and maybe one or two mutations might not be so bad. It might not make those vaccines ineffective. But what happens is, okay, so one, it mutates right into a strand, and we've already seen these in Australia, UK, South Africa, Brazil. Those strands of those mutations have spread all over the globe, and then and those strands have mutations, and those strands have mutations. So you get this build-on effect, and eventually those mutations to that virus make it so much different from that original strand that vaccine was developed on, that the vaccine is just ineffective, because that vaccine was developed on this original strand of the virus, this original strand of coronavirus, and you've got all these other strands that have mutated so much that it just doesn't resemble that original strand. That's a lot of what we get with influenza every year, right? There are so many strands of influenza out there that epidemiologists and medical experts, they have to stay on top of it. They have to look at, okay, which strand of this virus of flu each year do we think is going to be the biggest one? And that's the one that they create that vaccine. That's the vaccine you take every year. You're not vaccinating against all the strands of flu out there. You're vaccinating against the strand of flu, the flu virus that the medical experts, the doctors, and all that, they think is going to be the most the most pervasive across the population, and the vaccine that's going to protect you from most of the worst strands that year. And it's going to be the same with the virus, right? It's just going to, this thing is going to keep on mutating until eventually these original vaccines wear off. A big part of this is just the fact that there is just going to be so much opportunity for the vaccine to mutate, and a lot of that is in the speed of distribution in the vaccine. Okay, we look at some areas. North America is right around 21%, 22% of the population is vaccinated or has at least one dose, right, of the vaccine so far. As high as 32% in the U.S. I think it's down maybe 12-15% in Canada. Europe, though, is 13-14%. South America down to 8%, and I can tell you here in Colombia, I'm not getting it. I have to take a trip back up to the U.S. To get my vaccine, because I'm never going to get it here in Colombia. They are so far behind. My wife is a nurse, right, and they have literally transitioned just about every floor in the hospital into an ICU ward. Okay, that's how bad this new wave of virus infections have gotten, because people heard a vaccine is out, so we don't need to socially distance, we don't need to wear masks, all that crap, so they're getting the virus, right? And every floor in that hospital is filled up with ICU people from COVID, from things like that. And it's that way across Latin America, across a lot of Asia. We're seeing record number of cases in India. China's even putting on new cases, but I mean, you see here, Asia is only 2.7% inoculated with that first dose. South America 8%. So what happens here, and what we're seeing here, is that, and especially countries like India, where they're putting out 4 million doses a day, but in a country of 1.5 billion, it's not making a dent in it. Okay, there are still so many opportunities for this vaccine to spread, for it to mutate, and the and like we're talking about, this is what we're talking about, is you give a virus enough time and enough hosts to spread and to mutate, and it's going to do that. It's going to mutate, right? Best thing you can do about a virus is just close it off completely all at once, very quickly. Don't give it the opportunity to spread and to mutate, and we're just not able to do that globally, right? So that's really the key reason why I think, and really why 90% of the medical community thinks that COVID will become endemic. Okay, eventually we're going to get so many iterations of these mutations onto this from this original COVID that it's just going to make the vaccine ineffective, and we're going to see that. We're going to see the vaccines ineffective, and we're going to see a new pandemic, right? Now, when is this going to happen? When could it happen? Most mutations, they're not different enough from that original strand to make the vaccine ineffective, like we've been talking about. But again, what happens is each mutation, each life cycle of the virus or that strand, that mutation builds on each other until several generations down that line, the virus is different enough. In another survey of 77 experts in 28 countries, medical experts, 2/3, 66%. So 2 out of 3 said a year or less before the virus mutates, enough for the current vaccines to become ineffective. It's a year or less. Okay, another 18% thought it'd be 2 years or more. So you get the kind of that middle area that thought it was between a year and 2 years. Now. And I'm not in this camp that thinks it's going to be so quick, within the next year. I think that would probably be the worst case scenario. But I mean, if you just look at this data, look at the facts, and look at how few people are actually getting vaccinated globally, and how much opportunity this virus has to spread. It's a year to 18 months, I'd say. 1 year to a year and a half. We're gonna see a mutation of this come out that makes the vaccines ineffective. All right. And now again, what we're talking about here, we're not talking about the huge pandemic that we've had over the last year. Okay, just like the flu and other things. Drug makers are going to be able to use what they've learned from this prior vaccine and from the virus to be able to make a vaccine faster, right? But it's still going to be a huge shock to the market, especially that first time it happens, right? And I think, as we come to the fact, the horrible reality that this is just a new life, a way of life, that we're going to have this virus out there, and we're going to constantly have to be getting new vaccines and things like that, then that's going to be a harsh reality for the market to wake up to. And I want you to be ready in the stocks that are going to benefit, but also in the stocks out of the stocks that are going to get hit the hardest. Okay, so let's talk about how to invest in this. What happens when that first endemic reality hits the market. Now, I do still think there's an opportunity, a short-term opportunity in some of those hardest hit industries, like the airlines, like the cruises, retail, things like that. We did a video a couple of weeks ago on the reopening stocks that I like, even added some of those to the 2021 Bowtie Nation portfolio. And it's, it is undeniable that this year is going to be extremely strong for retail, for a lot of these, travel and tourism companies, right? People had we talked about the $2.5 trillion in excess savings, right? JP Morgan, I'm going to kick someone out here because we don't need spamming and crap like that in our chat. Anyway, JP Morgan estimates that households have saved an extra $2.5 trillion beyond what they were doing before the pandemic, in this last year. That's all pent up demand. That's money that they're going to be spending over the next few months, especially in the U.S., but even further out into Europe and Asia, Latin America, when those economies get opened up more. So, I mean, it's undeniable that those companies are going to have very good years, and they're still rebounding, right? Just recently, stocks in the consumer discretionary sector. Okay, so if you're signed up to the daily bow tie, our free market update goes out every night, before the market opens the next day. Then you've been seeing that we've been following these sectors and these sector trades, right? These sector themes, these trends, where okay, so you've got tech stocks, communication services stocks have largely been a factor of where interest rates are going, right? You don't, the higher interest rates are driving down these stocks. And it was happening that way with the consumer discretionary stocks as well. Every time we would see higher interest rates, we would see the retail stocks, the consumer discretionary stocks take a hit, okay, because these were high PE ratio stocks, growth stocks, things like that. And but that's kind of disconnected lately because even in good news or bad, we know that we're going to get those trillions of dollars spending, consumer spending over the next few months, and it's going to push up a lot of these consumer discretionary stocks. And these are all the things that you don't necessarily need to buy, but you buy anyway because they're awesome. These are trips, these are cruises, these are fancy watches and apparel and things like that. Right? That's consumer discretionary. So it's undeniable that these stocks are going to do very well over the next year. Now, of course, a lot of that is already built into the stock prices right now, but I don't think it's quite built up to the level that we're going to see. I think that we're still going to see a surprise, and I think you can still make money on a lot of those in the short term. We've seen a surprising number of strength in the consumer, and we're probably going to see surprise strength in the consumer during the summer, especially there in the U.S. Like I said, but I would be worried about beyond the fall, okay, and I probably wouldn't want to be in those risk plays into the flu season next year or this year, right, into October, November, December, and again, what we'll talk about here is, okay, so you've got that short-term opportunity in these consumer discretionary stocks, these hardest hit stocks, airlines, cruises, retail, even the malls maybe a little bit, though we're seeing some recent weakness in those. But so I think you can make money in those through probably towards into the fall of this year, into the third quarter. But a lot of these, especially airlines, cruise lines especially, had really weak margins before the pandemic. Okay, if you look at the financial statements, look at the income statement for a lot of the airlines, the cruise operators, they might be making, I think for the airlines, it's like something like 4%, right? Out of all their sales, they're only converting 4% of that into net income, into profits, right? Net income available to shareholders, 4% profit margin. And that was, in historically, 2019, one of the best years for airlines in a long time, in decades. So for a lot of these, what happens when even as the consumer comes back, you still don't see a lot of that international spending, a lot of the business spending for the airlines. International flights and business flights together are about 25% of an airline's revenues. That's not coming back immediately, and international flights are going to be a long time before we see those come back. So what happens when, even in the best of times, you're only able to convert 4% of your sales into earnings, and then now you pile on tens of billions of dollars in debt and shares. All these companies have issued shares, to stay alive. They've all borrowed more debt to stay alive. And this is besides diluting shareholders of those earnings, you're also going to be having to pay back, millions more dollars in interest payments, right? So, even if the experts are way off on this, even if the experts that say the coronavirus is going to mutate into another form and it's going to be endemic within a year, even if they're way off, even if it's 2 years, these companies, the airlines and the cruise lines especially, they're just not going to have time before another scare to be able to rebuild, okay, to be able to get their financial statements in order, to be able to shore up their balance sheet and things like that. It's just not going to happen, okay? They're not going to be able to pay off those tens of billions of dollars of debt. I think American Airlines just recently, last couple of weeks, has joined the $50 billion club, okay? And that's not a good thing because it's $50 billion of debt that they owe on their balance sheet, right? And there's just no way in hell they're going to be able to to pay those off, to pay that off, or even pay off a significant chunk before 1 year, 2 years, and we get another virus scare. Again, virus isn't gonna the next iteration of the virus, when it becomes endemic, it isn't going to be a huge global lockdown pandemic, but it's going to be long enough that we're going to have we're going to have restrictions. We're going to have some form of lockdowns, and people just aren't going to fly as much. People are going to stop flying because out of the fear of getting this new mutation of the virus, of being a part of that, they're going to take their cars more instead. And and the airlines and the cruise lines are going to suffer. Cruise lines even more. These things are floating petri dishes. So you'll see cruise lines, get shut down immediately on any kind of another virus scare. Okay. So what I'm saying here is, maybe if you want, if you're a risk taking investor, then yeah, jump in these things over the summer here. Maybe you ride the wave higher and book those short-term profits. But as we hit into the flu season, as we get into October, November, and beyond that, then I would pull back on those. Take those profits in those hardest hit industries. First of all, because you're going to have that ever-present risk of that next headline of an endemic coronavirus. You're going to have a risk that somebody is going to have a mutation of the virus that makes those vaccines ineffective. That's going to come out in the news, and the market's going to just go apeshit. Okay, that's going to be an ever-present risk until it actually happens, and then it's going to happen. But also, it's just these things are going to be dead money for a while. Okay, you're going to get an initial bump as we see that huge, massive wave of consumer buying and consumer demand over the summer and even partly into the fall. But then after that, like I said, these companies, they weren't stellar profit-making machines before this. Okay, now they've piled on those tens of billions of dollars in debt, millions and millions of more shares, and it's just going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for these companies to be able to turn profitable and be able to reward shareholders with returns. So it's just not worth it on that risk return scenario. What I am looking at, though, as far as the beneficiaries of this, I think drug makers like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, neither of which have really seen a huge bump in their shares. I love Pfizer. I think Pfizer is like a 4.5% dividend yield. It saw a quick boost there when the vaccines were approved in December, but it's since come down. Johnson & Johnson as well has had some of its own problems with the vaccine and distribution and manufacturing, but it's a one shot, it's a one dose, which is going to be huge for especially outside of the U.S. Where a lot of these countries where they're not able to they're not seeing the vaccine distribution quite as much. So I think Johnson & Johnson is really going to ramp up production. This week it's bad because they've had some production difficulties. So this week actually Johnson & Johnson is decreasing its virus production or distribution to the U.S. By like 70%. We're going to see a big, lots of headlines around that. But it's got that scale and it's got the financial power to really boost that production over these next couple of years. And of course, eventually, as the virus becomes endemic, then you're just going to see these companies every year, every couple of years, get a big boost in sales from a new iteration of the vaccine. A new vaccine that they're going to be able to put out and sell. Okay, so I like the drug makers like that, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. And then picking up some of these lockdown stocks into the summer when that reopening hits the share prices, right? You're going to see a lot of the stocks that did really well last year as we locked down. Think Peloton, think Etsy, or think a lot of those e-commerce plays, the deliveries, the DoorDash, things like that. I think you're going to see these get hit into the summer as the reopening, as people get out and they start using those services, right? Or they stop using those services. So you're going to see a lot of those shares get hit here through the summer. And I think I would be in there to pick up those on a discount, right? Because, of course, a lot of these are just long-term trends anyway. A lot of these e-commerce stocks, these delivery stocks, things like that, they're benefiting from those long-term trends in that direction anyway, right? So long-term, 10 years, these are great stocks to be in anyway. But also, of course, when that endemic scare comes over the next year or two, then they're going to see a huge boost. Okay, so not only are you in a great stock over the long term, that's going to be good long term returns, you're going to have the potential of getting that high, that big bump when this does become endemic, and when those initial that initial scare comes back. So that's kind of the thoughts here. Again, it's not that I don't think 2021 could still be a great year. I don't think you're going to see a sell off, and we'll talk about some of the shorter term factors in the market, as well as this longer term ideas like this. So I think 2021 could still be very good, but you have to be ready for an endemic coronavirus, and you have to be ready, to be out of the stuff that's going to get hit and in the stuff that's going to get boosted. But I want to switch this over to the chat here. We'll take some questions here.